Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker, Scott Provence. As a senior learning strategist at ELB Learning, Scott works with teams at every budget and development stage to create measurable and interactive training solutions. Scott is a health tech leader and content developer whose print and web-based curriculum has served millions annually across the world. He has worked in both public and private sectors, creating federal education programs and leading L&D teams from small startups all the way to Google. And with that, Scott, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Liz. Can you hear me okay?
Sound
All right.
great.
Thumbs up. Perfect. Well, it's so great to be here with you today and to chat with everyone. I'm really looking forward to having conversations. It looks like everyone is already making good use of the chat, so please do. It's great to see the global audience we've got here. So please do keep that going. And I know that I can get very nerdy and go down rabbit holes, but please do, as you have questions for me or comments or observations, just drop them into the chat, and I'll be excited to engage with those throughout the session today. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about data-driven sales enablement, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and make sure that this comes up okay. Thumbs up from you, Liz. We're looking good. Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, we'll talk a little bit today, a lot of it today, I guess, about all of the different ways that we can approach sales enablement training programs. And I'll actually back up a little bit because I specifically wanted to talk about things that I've found to be most effective, not only in sales enablement, but really in any training environment. So new hire onboardings, management training, soft skill trainings, but then certainly as we're empowering our frontline folks, whether that's customer service, sales representatives, account executives, all of those people can really be empowered and enabled at a next level when we incorporate things like games and failure and all these new technology tools that we've got at our disposal right now. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the things, again, that I've seen effective, and eager to hear from everyone else what they've used as well. Okay, so what are our objectives? I know we've only got 45 minutes, well, 40 minutes now. I'm going to cover a lot, but again, please do jump into the chat and tell me where you'd like me to pause, double click, go into more detail on, and then please do reach out afterwards. I'll have my email and a QR code where you can book time, find me on LinkedIn, all of those things, because there's a lot here, and so I know that we'll probably have lots more conversations to come. What I really want to cover, though, and what I really want you to feel empowered to walk away with, is understanding why failure is so important when it comes to designing enablement programs. I want you to understand the link between something that can feel as fuzzy or frivolous as gamification with the very serious actual ROI of sales training, and how we can link gamification to things like data-driven feedback. And I'll show you some of the case studies we've used about how to employ these types of mechanics within sales training, conversation training, pitch training, negotiation training, all of those types of things, and give you a chance to reflect at the end here about what potential action plan you might be able to create for your next sales enablement initiative. If there are other objectives that you'd really like to see, or if you were coming to this talk thinking, I really hope he covers X, Y, and Z, drop that in the chat too. I want to make sure that we're making this valuable time for you as well. And so please do jump in if you've got other things that you'd like to learn as well. I'm going to start by getting people engaged in this, though. So let's do a little pop quiz to start off our morning here. You can go ahead and just drop your answer in the chat. I know that gives people quiz anxiety, but this is, I promise there's no one true right or wrong answer here. But I'm eager to hear from our group here. We've got a good sample size. When you think the best time is for a multiple choice test. So you can drop in A, only at the start of the course, B, at both the start and the end, C, only at the end, or D, never. Oh man, we've got good participation so far, lots of votes, and I'm looking back, I see almost entirely Bs. Wow, we've got, and I hope this isn't just the wisdom of the crowd influencing other people. Wow, we got one C, okay, excellent, always, Bs, anytime, okay. So mostly Bs, I saw maybe one or two Cs, I saw a D, I saw kind of the opposite, the anytime and always. I didn't see any vote for an A, which is common. I think we're representative of what I typically see when I pose this question to folks. And one of the reasons I use this multiple choice quiz, also conveniently at the start of a conversation, is because I use it as a way to talk a little bit about my background in L&D. I actually got started as a college instructor and used I was teaching humanities courses, and so we never used multiple choice tests, because how can you create a black and white answer for something as broad as English literature? So I started with a never, you never use multiple choice. And then I got to teaching other departments in college, and we found that, okay, you do need a final exam for your history course. You need to know what the right year for Magna Carta. And so I would only use it at the end. And then I got more into corporate L&D. I spent a dozen years building out just corporate L&D programs. And if I could hypothesize where a lot of our B answers came from, if you're also working in any sort of corporate environment, you're probably used to the start and the end approach of, I'm going to test you. I'm going to see what your baseline is. I'm going to give you some training material, and then I'm going to test you again on hopefully that same baseline amount of knowledge, and we'll see if we can measure the delta, and we'll see how much we can attribute your change in knowledge to the material that I created for you. Pretty straightforward. What I've been really interested in discovering in just the last few years, and I wrote a book about this because I got so interested in the research behind this, is what happens if we create tests that are only delivered at the start of a course, and how does that change our entire conception of what it means to build training programs and enablement programs? And there's some really interesting research, and I'll share a little bit of that here. And again, this is not meant to be prescriptive, like you only need to create tests at the start, but just another tool for you to put in your tool belt when it comes to designing courses. So where a lot of this at the quote unquote at the start research came from, actually started way back in the 70s and 80s. Someone named Eleanor Gibson published a paper called Principles of Perceptual Learning and Development. And what Eleanor was exploring there is, how can we create environments where the modification and the learning actually occurs without any sort of external reinforcement? So how can the students teach themselves with a minimal amount of immediate feedback? In the 1980s, there was a cognitive scientist who used perceptual learning modules to evaluate how well it could teach pilots. And so the scientist sat down a bunch of novice pilots and said, okay, here's a cockpit. What is this panel telling you? I don't know if we have any pilots or novice pilots in our group here, but do you have any idea what this panel is telling you? I have absolutely nothing that I could offer here. And if you imagined you were a brand new pilot and you were given this test, you would probably take a guess and you would get a feedback if you were right or wrong, and then you would get another question, and you just get this repeated over and over again. And what this scientist in the 1980s found is that pilots with 1 hour, that spent 1 hour in the perceptual learning module, had the ability to read cockpit panels as well as pilots with 1,000 hours of flight time. So 1,000 to 1 on a return here should be telling us something as learning development professionals and sales enablement professionals. So something for us to kind of think about when it comes to, how do we want to design our test, and what is the benefit potentially of putting a bunch of seemingly unknowable or confusing or difficult information at the start and letting people founder their way through. All right. Bail out. People, it's telling me to get an expert, someone else to fly the plane. Yeah, good comments in our chat so far, and I agree. So hopefully this is starting to plant some seeds now. But what happens when I kind of turn the traditional training module of tell then test, or test then tell then test on its head, and just say, what if I just gave you the test and let you kind of fumble your way through? What that might be unlocking for you, or triggering for a lot of the audience here, is this idea of, well, that seems like a lot of failure right at the start. So those pilots must have been pretty hardy stock to be willing to submit themselves to an hour of just random guessing and saying, I have no idea what's going on here, and I'm feeling pretty down with myself. So yeah, something for us to kind of think about as we start to reconceptualize the ideas of failure. And this is a quote that you probably see on a lot of motivational posters, but it was something that I always had popping up in my searches when I started to do my research of failure, is this Wayne Gretzky quote. Anyone familiar with this Wayne Gretzky quote? I think, yeah, lots of people are, yeah, very, very much so. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Sure, yeah, okay. Thanks a lot, Wayne. I hope that's helpful for you. And maybe I guess if I was feeling really down about my development or my training program or my sales enablement courses, like yeah, that could pump me up a little bit. Here's a lesser known quote from Wayne Gretzky. Again, that's going to start to inform our exploration of failure and data-driven feedback. You only make 17% of the shots that you do take. So, and I do have a little asterisk here. Wayne Gretzky actually didn't say this last one, but if you permit me here, you take Gretzky's career goals and divide it by the number of shots taken, you actually do get an 83% failure rate. And so again, Wayne Gretzky never officially said this, but I actually think this quote is way more informative and telling and grounding for us as we start to think about designing failure and data-driven training programs. This is the kind of data that I think is really helpful for our learners. And again, I'm going to turn this over to our group here. Another little reflective moment here for you to put in the chats. How much failure do you expect to experience? And let's just put the framing around a training program. If you're in a brand new day one, this is my first day of a new job, and I'm going through, I'm in a sales role, and I'm going through my training program here. How much failure do I expect to experience in this new job, or maybe just in my new training program? So thanks, Craig, for starting us off. 75%, 45%, 83%, right in the Wayne Gretzky. Yeah, so we got Wayne Gretzky in the 83%. But everyone else, yeah, we're kind of, and I'm actually very impressed with what I'm seeing coming in the chat here, because typically, if you were to ask me, especially as I started my L&D career, how much failure should I build into my training programs? I would say 20%, because my standard for many years was, I will give you your final exam, and I expect you to get 80% as a passing rate, and anything more than that, and you failed too much to be trusted to be in this new role. Ironically, when you think about some of the other industry leaders in the area, boss would say 5%. Exactly. So we're dealing with subject matter experts that say, how dare you even propose 50% of a failure rate? I need a 20% or 80% pass rate to even consider putting this person on the floor. And yet so many of our industry leaders are failing on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Wayne Gretzky actually is an outlier here. James Dyson, the inventor of the Dyson vacuum, famously went through over 5,000 prototypes, so a 99% failure rate before he got his bagless vacuum cleaner. Thomas Edison went through 10,000 prototypes when he was trying to invent a new type of battery. He famously said, I haven't failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. And yeah, this is the point here. Failure is expensive for individuals, right? So and again, expensive in terms of maybe just a lot of that anxiety, or that, what happens if we put someone on the floor and we run the risk potentially of them getting something wrong in a very high stakes situation. So we've got a lot of our industry leaders over here, sports, business, otherwise, and we've got our training teams that are skewing toward the other end of the spectrum. And again, my own kind of go-to for many years was 80% pass rate. I don't care how difficult or easy this was, you should be above this line. Okay, I want to hear some more of your thoughts as to why this might happen, and why we get into this state of, why some clients and designers insist that everyone should be exposed to the right answer. This fear around getting too focused on the wrong things, getting too focused on failure. This idea that, well, you might just guess right if I give you just a single multiple choice question and then give you your certification and say you're okay to be on the floor. You have to tell everyone the right way. So it looks like I'm seeing some of the answers here in the chat. So yeah, certification fee, yeah, cost of fortune. So failing is expensive. Yep, absolutely. Depends on the cost of failure. Society, yeah, great. We're gonna dig into that one. Great comment there. Yeah, fear of failure built into your own metrics. These are all really important. So these are all, and think about these reasons. Think about how deep some of them go. I love this answer of society. How deeply we are being influenced to create sales enablement programs that are really so focused on, this is the right answer. Please only do this and ever only do this, and don't ever start to push those bounds a bit. The one thing that I haven't seen as a culprit for why we are so failure and failure averse and scared of the data that's actually showing us how good failure is. The one thing that I actually blame pigeons, and I'll explain a little bit. I think pigeons are one of our big culprits here because in the 1950s, this little animal was put into a very unique position of being given a grant from the U.S. military to help steer some missiles across the waters in World War II. And this came to be because someone named B.F. Skinner believed that he could get pigeons to press a certain button when they were given the right kinds of rewards. And so here's where I see a lot of our aversion to failure starting to take root. So you might have heard of this B.F. Skinner guy. Again, mid 20th century, he pioneered this concept of operant conditioning. If you've heard of the Skinner box, again, he would put these pigeons in a box, and again, this was actually done with some of the backing and funding of the government to say, can I get this pigeon to push a button when I want it to? And so you'd stick the pigeon in the box, and the box wouldn't really have anything other than a button. The pigeon would wander around and eventually push the button, and some food would show up. And so Skinner was kind of showing, look, I can associate an action like push a button with a reward, like you get food. Sadly, if we flash forward to how we're building enablement programs, yeah, probably pretty similar. I want you to do this one thing, and your reward is you get your commission, you close your deal faster. Here's the thing that sets us off on a very challenging path, I think. Skinner actually designed his experiments so that the pigeons were less likely to make mistakes. And what I mean by that is he would stick them in the box, give them the right answer, tell them to, get them to push this right answer button, and then very slowly fade in potential wrong answers. And Skinner's even thought to have said, errors are not a function of learning. And so again, all of a sudden we've now created an environment, and we had our behavioral science of the 20th century to back this up, that showed that this is the best way to get even pigeons to learn. What's really frustrating is that new research has now come out that shows that if you actually give pigeons the right and wrong answers and let them fail and do trial and error, they actually learn faster when they're allowed to make mistakes. The same goes for humans. There was a UCLA study where two groups were split up. One was given a very traditional instruction, so lecture, examples, homework, final exam. The other group was given purposefully confusing questions at the start, no explanation until right before the exam, and that second group scored 10% higher on that final exam. And then when both groups were given a brand new subject, group 2 scored 30% higher on that brand new subject. So something is happening in our brains when we are given this chance to fail early and often and get that data-driven feedback. And I want us to, again, we're going to pause for a second and I'll see what questions are coming up. But I want us to think about how this relates to how we create sales enablement and training programs and how much we are designing our programs to avoid mistakes. So this might feel like a very common scenario, right? You're sitting down in your day one sales training and you see, okay, here's foundations. I'm going to lecture to you what our culture is, our history, our mission. I might give you a quiz on that. Can you remember it? I want to give you the company policies, and then I'm going to overview our product suite. We are going to go over the key benefits. Again, I'm only going to focus on what is known and what is right, and then I want to make sure that you can parrot that back to me. What are we gaining from that? What are we potentially losing from that? And how might a new approach get us into a new potential? Think about that for a little bit. And yeah, I want to kind of scroll back through if there's questions coming in, a chance for us to kind of ask anything that's on your mind right now. And then we're really going to start to dive into games and data and AI and some of these tools that we can use now that we've set the stage for a little bit of understanding on why failure is such a big motivator and driver for us. These are really good comments. I hope that we keep this chat here. Liz, is there anything that I'm missing here? Yeah, perception of the company culture. Yeah, this again, and I go back to that comment someone had made about society. This not only company culture, but just society as a whole, and the shadows of 20th century education systems that we are still trying to get out from under. So these are big headwinds that us in the learning and development and sales enablement industries are still trying to fight against. And yes, oh, thank you from Naomi. The approach should possibly include seeking feedback. Yes, so this idea of feedback is going to be really important as we get into this next chapter here. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, just a lot of, back and forth of like, we hear you, but like our company
Yeah.
just, it's too expensive to fail kind of,
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah. Sales, oh, this is good from Laurel too. Sales is not an arena where organizations want innovation. I love that comment, and I think that's going to be such an important one, especially if you're looking at some of this and going, okay, well, what can I do with this? How can I create an innovative or a next level program? Asking that question that Laurel is posing here, is my company open to and ready to having an innovative sales enablement program? That's a good question to ask your stakeholders and your subject matter experts. And if they're not, getting them to kind of come to terms with that might be a good step. Scott, we're bringing you in to redesign a new enablement training program. Oh, great. Do you want an actual innovative one, or do you want me to kind of rehash what you guys did last year? Because I could do either. I mean, I can copy and paste and kind of update our product sheet, or we could try something different. But that's a really good question to ask, because if we help our subject matter experts and stakeholders confront, yeah, you know what, we don't want anything new. We hope that we get the same results as we did last year. Great. Let's be honest about that at least then. Um, these are really good. I feel like each of these comments here could have a whole talk track on them. So for anyone looking for their next collaborative book idea or talk track, we'll reach out. We'll start to dig into some of these. So yeah, this is really, really good. All right, I'm going to jump ahead into our next section, but I do want to keep some of these in mind. And Liz or others remind me. We talked about feedback. We're gonna jump back into that. We're talking about technology here. Yep, there's some of these things that you'll start to see in some of these next slides here. All right, so what about games? I came to this talk because Scott said games and he said AI, and he hasn't talked about either of those things yet. So what's going on? And data, like we're going to talk about data-driven enablement. Here's some data, and here's some data specifically about games. Anyone a game player? I'm not really actually, but as I got into some of my book research and some of these other things, I've learned a little bit more about games. I've never played Dark Souls 2, but I thought this was so interesting. In 2014, people played this game, Dark Souls 2. I think it won a bunch of Game of the Year awards. Those that were playing that year, this is the other cool thing with digital games, were able to track kind of aggregated gamer metrics. People who were playing this very popular game were dying at a rate of 150,000 times per hour. So at that rate, Nintendo Switch, we got some good gamers on here. So that death rate for this one game was 23 times higher than the actual death rate in the real world. And congratulations, if you're listening to this, you are part of an industry in which we actually had to invent a new term for death. Anyone in the gaming community is aware of this concept of permadeath, and that is different. I just love this. I love this idea that we have this term now that's, well, there's death, but then there's permadeath. And permadeath in the gaming community means you actually die as your character. You have to start back over at the game. And the reason this is important is because in gaming culture, we are allowed to make mistakes. We are allowed to fail. And in fact, failure is a necessity in gaming environments. And if you don't believe me, just think about the last time you've played tic-tac-toe, which has probably been years ago. And I don't play tic-tac-toe because I don't have a chance to lose, really. It's just kind of boring. We tie all the time. So failure is actually a core mechanic of gamification. More than points, more than badges, more than leaderboards. It's how well we measure and incorporate failure into our environments, whether they're games or they're trainings, that help us track how well we're doing in our real world. So again, something to think about when if you have an environment or working with teams that kind of turn their nose up at games and gamification. We know that failure, and we saw this someone put this in the chat too, failure is one of the best ways people can learn. We saw that in perceptual learning modules. We saw that in some of the UCLA studies. So we know failure is important, but everyone is terrified of failure. Organizations don't like it. People don't like it. Thanks to our 20th century psychologists, we are conditioned to fear it. And yet, if we enter the magic circle of a game, we all of a sudden have the option of denying that game failure matters. so we can excuse ourselves when we are playing a game. And again, this should feel somewhat earth-shattering, or at least it was to me when I kind of made these connections. This is the one spot where it's okay to fail, and this is also, by the way, the one spot where we know learning is the best way to take place, is when we're failing a lot. All right, so that's a little bit about games. And again, you can see that not only is failure important, but for games, data and feedback is king. I don't, all the way down to my coding architecture of how a game plays, I need to know how things are measured, how far I'm jumping, how many points that I'm winning. An entire game's architecture is built around data and feedback. So if we know that death and failure in games is super important, and if we are helping revolutionize an industry that is having to redefine what it means to die, we should look a little bit into games and a little bit into how data-driven feedback really runs every gaming environment, and potentially could run any training environment. And you know what this screen is? Like putting everyone on the spot in terms of their gaming culture. Super Mario Brothers. Yes, this is the very first screen on the very first level of good old Super Mario Brothers. What are some of the feedback elements you can see on this screen? 1-1. Yeah, exactly. So what are the data points, the feedbacks? What are the things that you're going to interact with on this screen? Coin boxes. Yep, absolutely. The physics even, I mean, again, when this first came out, it's like, oh my gosh, it's got gravity in it. The Goombas, yep, pipe, mushroom, coins. I got tons of data points that I can get feedback from, interact with, collect. Yep, the question marks, absolutely, right? I got all this stuff. This is a data-rich environment right from the get-go. Okay, here's another question. In terms of seconds or minutes or hours, how long, if I get dropped into this level 1, stage 1 game, how long before I know that I've lost? If I don't do anything here, about how long would it take for me to get feedback that that something has happened? And this is like, again, you have to tap into your childhood memories of playing this. Yeah, 10 seconds, 3 seconds, somewhere in between that. Yeah, 5 seconds. Yeah, probably 5 to 7. And if you haven't played Super Mario Brothers, what happens is the game starts. This is you, and this little angry Goomba guy is walking toward you. And so you better pick up the controller, and you got to figure out what's happening, because in about 5 seconds, that Goomba runs into you and you fall off the screen. So I loved this. And again, this seems so straightforward and simple from a gaming environment. Let me ask you another question now. In your last training program or sales enablement program, how long in terms of seconds or minutes of hours before your learner got their first piece of feedback? 1 day, 10 minutes? Thinking back to my college courses where it was like, oh my gosh, 3 months? How terrible is that? Not 5 to 7 seconds. Yep. Half day. Immediately. Good for some art. Yeah. Awesome. So again, something for us to think about. We know that in a game environment, again, maybe because we feel like it's okay, or the mechanics kind of push us to build feedback in immediately. Think about that ratio or that speed of feedback compared to how we build our training programs. Half day, 10 minutes if we're lucky. Again, kudos to the folks that recognize, hey, I need to drop someone in and I need to get them interacting and give them feedback immediately. Because when I first started building my training programs, it was, oh yeah, it was like that sample syllabus that you saw on the earlier screen. Well, the first day, it's really about company culture, and we're going to talk about values, and we're going to talk about why customers choose our products, and then I'm going to go over the benefits of our product. And yeah, maybe on day 2, I'll give you a little quiz to see how much this is sticking. What am I doing? What am I doing with my time and my learners here? So again, something for us to think about. Yeah, something for us to think about as we're coming in. And thanks, Liz, for the reminder here. We've got 15 minutes left, and yeah, I'm going to show you a little bit now of how we can apply all of this stuff and wrap it together into an enablement programs. And yes, please do, as you're thinking, I know I'm dumping a lot of stuff on you, a lot of high-level conceptual stuff, but start to drop that in either in the chat or reach out to me afterwards as you start to think about what philosophical, pedagogical shifts this might be sparking for you. So now we're going to kind of wrap all of this up, kind of come circle back to our what's it all mean for us now. We've looked at failure. We've looked a little bit at games. We haven't touched on AI yet, but we will. And what you should be starting to see is when I approach my sales enablement programs with a gamified, data-driven environment, all of a sudden, this can really start have a domino effect on how I'm building and framing a lot of my objectives and metrics. And all of a sudden, this starts to call into question the things that I'm probably typically counting in my training programs. This is kind of a typical data set that I see in enablement programs. And this is, again, something that if you're out there, if anyone is out there in the middle of shopping for LMSs, this is probably what you see in a lot of LMSs saying that they can count. This is data driven for a lot of our training environments. Anyone have things that they add to this list when they think about collecting data for their enablement programs? I got my participant numbers. I can track how many people have completed courses, the number of attempts. Sure, that's great. Session duration or seat time, that's a big one. My managers want to know, great, I've got new hires. How quickly can they get out onto the floor? I can track drop-off points. So I had this great 10-minute video, but everyone dropped at minute 7. Yeah, time on task, awesome. Quiz scores, leaderboard ranks, feedbacks. Sure, did people like my course or not? All of this stuff. Yeah, if there's anything else that's not on here, yeah, drop it on the list. Here's the big question for me. How many of these metrics actually connect to the behaviors that the salesperson should be doing on the job? Maybe, yeah, 0, none. And how depressing is that? That we're all of a sudden kind of picking our heads up out of these enablement builds that we have and going, wait a minute, what are we measuring? Maybe quiz scores is like the closest we can get. Is like, yeah, you could remember the 3 bullets I gave you in day 1, and maybe you'll need that on a phone call, but probably not, or you're probably going to encounter it in a very different way. All of these metrics are designed to measure engagement within the context of the LMS itself, but not on the job. So again, as we kind of wrap up our broad-reaching exploration of this, to think about, if this is our typical enablement programs, and this is what we're quote unquote counting in our data-driven feedback, and we're super data-oriented, is this helpful at all? And if it's not, what's possible? This is what I want to see more in enablement programs today. And again, we could spend an hour, we could spend half a day talking about each of these and how we build them out. But my hope is, just by planting some of these seeds and seeing the through line that we've built from, why we've been so scared of failure, how that's driven our traditional building of programs, why we maybe shy away from gamification because it feels fuzzy, but it really uncovers a lot of these core mechanics. This is what I want us to be starting to build toward now, is, can I take the adventurous effort of saying, well, I want to create an enablement program that, again, is not just doing the same old, or copying and pasting from last year's program, but I want to see if I can focus it around revenue growth, or time to first deal, or negotiation skills. And probably what you're thinking right now is, yeah, this sounds like a great ideal plan, Scott. None of this stuff is possible to build into a program, or none of this can be actually measured. That's where I want to, in a robust and healthy and positive way, start to challenge this and push this a little bit. So this is some of the things that we've been doing at ELB Learning, some of the things I've been exploring. And if you're interested in some of these, let's talk more, because all of this stuff is possible. We just got to start thinking a little bit more out of that Skinner box. Some of the stuff, again, when you think about, again, slightly out of the box opportunities, branching scenarios, that's great. I mean, I would rather have branching scenarios than a multiple choice quiz. So, we build programs where it's, let's really focus on cross-selling opportunities, and we'll put this within the framework of a scenario-driven environment. So I need new mascara. Okay, well, what is a question that I could ask here that is open-ended, that actually opens up potentially new opportunities here? This is a great way to do cross-selling. Here's AI finally. And again, I've done entire talks on AI, but I just want to kind of tease you with some of the technology that's possible. We've had branching environments for a while. What we have now is the ability to incorporate chatbots that are prompt engineered to incorporate and add and respond to any open-ended conversation that you have. So here's a chatbot we're using for coaching programs. You can have a wide-ranging, open-ended conversation on that. And then in the back end, we've actually designed algorithms that can quantify and classify things like open questions or reflective statements or active listening. And you can kind of see here as this learner is typing in their responses, again, which are totally open-ended, we are actually classifying those in the back end and giving them instant feedback, which we can even gamify and say, okay, here's your customer walking along, and based on your response, their situation is going to get brighter or their situation is going to get darker. Again, this is all stuff that is possible that is really now pushing the boundaries of what we're measuring in terms of cutting edge programs. This learner was having a great interaction. If you have less good conversations, turns out this game is going to get really dark really fast. So yeah, a couple of ways that we're really starting to show some cutting edge enablement programs. We've got some other good tools where you're actually able to practice your sales pitches and upload videos and have mentors or peers actually engage with you. And if they don't have time to do that, we can scale that again through AI. And you can see how seamlessly data-driven feedback can integrate into programs when they are framed in this manner. And again, all of this comes back to those first principles of what is my relationship to failure? What is my relationship to putting the learner in the driver's seat right at the start and saying, hey, welcome to your first day of training. Upload a video of how you would describe this company. Oh my gosh, that's terrifying, but I'm also super engaged. And I know that I'm going to learn faster now than if I was sitting staring at a screen for 3 days straight. The last thing I'll say, and then I'm going to turn this over for a question, is, again, I know how scary this can be. Tracking failures makes people super nervous. I did a program a couple years ago where they said we want to decrease call escalations by 20% in the first month, and you got about a week to launch this program. We dumped people in to this call center feedback training program. They didn't like it that much. My results were, yeah, this was fine. I'm not super happy with it. I was really confused. I didn't get it. I failed the exam. These metrics got me super nervous right at the start. And so this was kind of that idea that like maybe this program is a failure because no one likes it as much and everyone's getting the exams kind of wrong. And yet I had to go out of my LMS system because my LMS didn't have the ability to track this. But when I tracked the actual behaviors, the gray bars were the numbers of questions people were asking on their Q&A channels. The red line is the experts that were having to come in and answer. The yellow line is the peers that were actually learning on their own how to support each other. And this is exactly what my SMEs wanted to see is, great, I've saved my time now. These peers are actually really sharp in terms of answering their own questions, helping each other out. And guess what? We decreased call escalations by 17% in the first month. So really the argument to my stakeholders was, are we okay with potentially bad final exam scores if this is the actual real world behavior? All right, I'm going to pause here. You're going to get some PDFs coming your way that sum up some of these more things. We have all sorts of cool games, and there's easy ways to wade into this. We don't have to immediately jump into AI-driven open-ended chatbot activities. So I'll pause here and kind of see what questions are coming up for folks in our last 5 minutes here.
Yeah, we did have one, but I'm asking Juan to clarify a little bit. So maybe I can, as we can chat through, and maybe you understand where he's coming from. But he said he would love, where can we get some definitions of these metrics? And it was specifically a few slides ago that you were on with the chat bot. So I don't know if he about that. Yes.
We, if it was the open-ended kind of AI-driven chatbot, there was a peer-reviewed article that we published a little bit about those specific metrics that talked about how do we define open questions and a reflective statement and all of those things. So yeah, happy to, Quan, if you want to reach out, and I'll have my email at the end here, happy to send that article your way. Good question.
Yes. And I saw the chat get a little bit quiet when we were talking about gamification. And I don't know if it's like, yeah, my stakeholders would never allow this kind of thing. So I would love for you to explain like what I know you showed it a little bit there with the statistics, but even more so, how do we get stakeholders to agree with this,
Yeah, exactly. Like as soon as I try to bring up gamification, Scott, my stakeholders are like, nope, I'm out, or we're too serious for that, or yeah, we're a compliance industry, we don't play games here. Honestly, one of the things that I've done in those situations is replace gamification with behavioral or outcomes oriented, because really that's what we're talking about with gamification is I want people taking action and I want people getting feedback faster. So yeah, I totally hear you. If you're in that space where it's like we can't play games, great. Let's talk about behaviors and let's talk about the 3 second feedback rule and not the half day feedback rule. And so sometimes just reframing that in that manner can help people go, oh yeah, like I want that. Just we don't have fun. Oh, okay, fine. We'll do behaviors instead.
Love that. And with that, Craig asked a question, what programs were you featuring in the examples for gamification?
Yeah. So some of the easier again kind of like lower barrier to entry for some of these programs. Check out our training arcade. Looks like some people already have. The some of the other programs. One back before this is rehearsal. Again, another one that's out of the box in the sense that you can deploy this with your teams today. This is a more of a customized thing that we've built for a specific client. So yeah, all sorts of custom things that we can do. If you're interested in more of the back end work that got us there, let me know. And yeah, so it kind of runs the gamut of I need something to launch today versus yeah, I've got a little bit of time. And I've got 6 things that I want to measure. So how can you help me build out some algorithms that get me there? All of that's possible.
Beautiful. Well, that is all the time we have. I'll let this slide stay up for a few seconds. So everybody, please scan that QR code. I know, Scott, you put your email in the chat, so also copy and paste everybody. But is there any last things you would like to leave with the audience today?
I just really, it's been so much fun to see how much the chat's blowing up. I just love the conversations. My only regret is I didn't have a chance to, again, each one of those things I feel like could be an hour long conversation. So yeah, please do book more time. Find time to chat with me. As you can probably tell, I love talking about all this. So hope I get a chance to continue the conversation.